Hey everybody, we're back. This is the second chapter of the Eric Johnson Stratocaster Refret. As you can see, I've got all the frets removed, and now we're going to prep the fretboard to install the stainless steel fret wire. The first thing I'm going to do is to clean up this fret slot. You see where the tangs hold up wood fibers. So these fibers are sticking up. They're standing proud of the fingerboard level. So what I'm going to do is just take this file and level them out. With this small rat tail file, it's like a jeweler's rat tail file, I'm just going to go over the slot itself so I can knock the edge off. And the reason I'm doing this is because typically fret wire is extruded, and the inside corner of the bead to the tang is not always necessarily a sharp 90-degree corner. And so if this is a sharp 90-degree corner, it may not allow the fret to seat fully and completely into the fingerboard. It may float a little bit because of the fillet on the inside corner of the bead. So that's why I'm getting rid of this. Let's measure the slot size. So here I've got some feeler gauges, and I'm going to take a guess that it's about 23 thousandths. Let's see if that fits. A little tight. Let's see. How about 22? Right, so 22 fits easily, 23 is a little snug. Alright then, so my calipers tell me that this tang is 22 thousandths of an inch. So this is a perfect fit. The slot is 22 or 23 thousandths, the tang is 22 thousandths. And so just as an anecdote, speaking of fret tang widths, slot widths, the old-timers used to be able to control the bow, the back bow of a neck, by using oversized tangs. Here's how they did it. You know, especially if the guitar had no truss rod, like some of the older Martins, for instance. If you have a 22 thousandths wide slot and you put in a bigger fret tang, one that fits really tight, over the span of a number of frets, because the tang is bigger, it's going to force a back bow into the neck. But as I said, this is just an anecdote. You don't really see a lot of that going on nowadays. I mean, we have a lot of truss rods, two-way truss rods, that kind of thing. So here you see, this is fret slot number 11. Here you see a bunch of chunks that were torn out. Thankfully, nothing beyond the lacquer line. So all I have to do is make sure that this is all level. I can see that this one is actually pretty loose. I may just glue that in with a drop of CA, or not. No, this one wants to say goodbye. So see ya. Now I'm not worried because there are still original flat spots here that the fret bead can sit on. So as long as none of this stuff is proud, and you know, or even for that matter, the fret bead will sit on this side, which seems to be clean, and so this will support it. So what we don't want is for the fret to sink below the level of the neighboring frets. We want them all to be even in height. Had any of these torn out into the fingerboard area, into the fretboard area, this would have been a very different repair. I would have had to make sure that I saved that piece, the chunk, I would have glued it back in, and then surely I would refinish the fingerboard. Not such a bad thing if it was ebony or rosewood. You can glue it back in and then just level it out with sandpaper, finer and finer grits until it's a nice polish. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that the frets are going to be glued in after I install the fret wire. I will wick some thin CA glue in, and that will hold them, that will freeze them into place. And there are a number of benefits from gluing fret wire in, and we'll talk about that later when we get to it. So now I have all the fret slots filed. The corners are knocked off with my jeweler's rat tail file, and I've cleaned up anything that's proud. I've gone in with an X-Acto blade and just cleaned out chunks of debris, but it's very important that all debris is gone. That means dust, everything. So what I'm going to do is actually just vacuum it out as well. Now this is a pretty easy example because there's no binding on the neck. With binding, that's a different ball game altogether. You can't just run a tool right through and clean it out. You can't take a saw blade and clean it out by running a saw blade through it. Yes, there are special saw blades that have, that are only very small, that you can run back and forth in between, but still the debris gets trapped in between the bindings, so you've got to get that stuff out. So you may have to take a blade like this, run it up to the edge of the binding and pick it up and out, and then vacuum again. You will feel with whatever tool you go in there with that there is an even surface. Also, previous fret jobs that may have been glued in, you want to make sure that you get rid of all the little chunks of glue. Like right here, I can see that this is traveling along smoothly. The fret bottom is nice and smooth. There's no obstruction in there. When you sometimes you get to a fret job that was glued in and you get lumps and bumps and stuff like that, that could impede the tang from seating all the way down, and so you've got to get rid of that stuff.